Hey guys, Sci-Fi Guy 2094 here. Today I'm going to be diving into a controversial topic that should not be controversial. So, I'm going to be talking about trans women in sports. Now, let me say this. I have no issue with transgender people. I believe they should be afforded the same rights as everybody else. I'm not agreeing, like, let's say Trump tries to ban transgenders from the military. I'm not in favor of that. If they want to serve and do it honorably, I have no issue with that. And of course, the judge blocked that. I don't know if you call it an executive order or that injunction, whatever it was. I mean, it's not legal. You can't just ban transgenders from the military. They should be afforded the same opportunities in housing and jobs. And if there's a transgender individual who is over 18 and they want to start, hormone replacement therapy to transition to the opposite gender, that should be completely legal. I think nobody has an issue with people over 18 making those decisions. So I guess you could say I'm kind of woke because I stand for trans rights. But here's what I don't stand for. And unfortunately, many people in the LGBT community have kind of been, and I'm not saying I'm in the LGBT community, I identify as a straight man, but unfortunately many people who are in that community have kind of been they've kind of been shamed into supporting the whole issue of transgender women in women's sports. You have gay people and lesbians that are speaking out and saying, wait, whoa, what does transgender women competing in sports have to do with my rights as, like, say they're like a gay man? They'll say, well, hey, I'm a gay man. I just want to live my life. Don't drag me into this whole transgender rights thing. I just want to be myself and get married and have a husband. I don't believe a trans woman should be in women's sports. Unfortunately, the trans radicals will attack that person and say, you're a transphobe. You are against your own kind. You hate trans people. You're a sellout to your own community. And the gay men and the gay women are just like, no, we're not selling you guys out. We're just saying, hey, we're not talking about the same issue here. We're talking about, we want rights to adopt children. We don't want to be harassed walking down the street. We don't want to get beat up. We don't want to be fired because we come out as gay. That's all we want. No, that's what the gay people are saying. And the transgender activists, and it's the radicals too, and it's not even regular trans people, that's the issue. The transgender radicals are saying, you got to stand with us or you're against us. So basically, they are, I don't know if I'm even using this term right, but I guess they're gaslighting the gay people into supporting their own movement of, like, transgender women in sports. So quick rundown. Again, trans women are men who identify as women. I got no issues calling you by your pronouns, she, her, but in terms of sports, you can just look at the evolutionary history and the anatomy of men and women and, do your own research, but you'll come to the conclusion that men, in fact, have different bodies than women. A year of testosterone suppressant, it doesn't negate the evolutionary history of men and women, okay? So, increased muscle mass, broader shoulders, denser bones, increased lung capacity. all these things. These are just a few things I mentioned you can look up. And testosterone suppressant. There are so many hormones in the human body. It's not really accurate to say, well, just blocking testosterone makes it a level playing field. It certainly doesn't. Okay, so anyway, transgender women should not be in women's sports, and vice versa. Trans men should not be in men's sports. Trans men being a woman who identifies and lives as a male. Someone like Elliot Page, who was previously Ellen Page. There's just too many advantages to overcome if you're that woman and you are competing against a trans woman. In the boxing world, there was this Italian chick, and she said she had never been hit that hard by, I think this boxer was from Algeria, Main Khalif, and previously this individual had failed a sex test with boxing, but for some reason he was allowed to compete with the women. Now it's coming out that, okay, this guy had internal testes. This wasn't a intersex situation. He had XY chromosomes. It was never intersex. There was never any ambiguity about it, but they simply hid these results. And now this is coming out, and it's like, well, we told you so. I mean, you could look at that guy, Imane Khalif, and know that that is a man. That woman said, the Italian boxer, she's like, I'd never been hit that hard. I remember back, that story came out a few years ago, and it was branded as like, oh, it's MAGA right-wingers, they're transphobic. Imane Khalif is a woman. How dare you say that Imane Khalif is a man? That's transphobic. You're also racist because somehow it's racist that an Algerian boxer is competing with women. I don't understand how it was racist. But anyway, they are branded racists and transphobes. By the way, there's no such thing as transphobia in this case, because it's not transphobia because a phobia would mean it's an irrational fear of that person competing. But if you're a woman, it's not irrational, because if you're looking at the actual history and evolutionary background of males and females, it's pretty reasonable to say that person has the anatomy of a man. I have no chance against that person. It's not fair to compete. So that wouldn't be transphobia, right? Because you would be justified in your reasoning. So again, I don't believe that there's such thing as transphobia in the context of women in sports. So anyway, that is my take on the situation. A lot of these things are being rectified. Say what you want about Trump, but he's on the right side of history with this. I'm sorry. And then for like all the regular transgender people out there, I'm sorry that the radicals have taken control of this conversation and shut you out, and as well as like normal gay people. I'm really sorry they shut you out too. Basically calling you guys sellouts for your own community if you don't support transgender women in sports. That's not the case. They're not trying to sell anybody out. They're just saying, hey, we recognize that anatomy and physiology is real, that there's an advantage there, and they shouldn't be allowed to compete. It's simple as that. So anyway, that is my thoughts. That's my take on the situation. Totally unfair. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is being rectified now that Trump is back in office. So I stand with any politician, it doesn't matter what side you're on, who is going to say, let's be fair to the women, let's uphold Title IX, and let's keep trans women out of women's sports, and let's keep trans men out of men's sports.